Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this digital networking forum, Emerging Ukraine. My name is Kjartan Svaland Tveitnes, and I'm the Managing Director of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. Together with the Norwegian Embassy in Kyiv, who is hosting the first session, the Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries, and the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ukrainian Embassy in Oslo, we today will digitally bridge stakeholders in both Norway and Ukraine. We intended to do this with gathering speakers and panelists in production studios in both Oslo and Kyiv, but unfortunately, due to the latest corona restrictions here locally in Oslo, we had to scale this down, the production in Oslo in the last minute, and I therefore welcome you from our own little piece of Ukraine in Oslo. This is the NUCC office. From here, we will host the second session of the Emerging Ukraine, starting in 1 hour at 1600 Norwegian time. But luckily, the production in Kyiv is up and running, although also with very strict corona controls of social distancing and plenty of antibac. Mr. Ambassador, can you hear us? Ambassador Svedal, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kjartan. Dear ministers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me as the new Norwegian ambassador in Ukraine to welcome you all to this online business networking forum held simultaneously both in Kyiv and Oslo, and organized by the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. This event takes place within the framework of the third session of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Business and Economic Cooperation, which was held online earlier today. The Commission expressed its satisfaction with the significant progress achieved in strengthening the economic cooperation between Norway and Ukraine since its last session in September 2018. During this period, we have witnessed the steady growth of the bilateral trade, launched by several Norwegian renewable energy companies of large-scale investment projects in Ukraine, ongoing implementation of a number of initiatives and projects in the energy sector, IT sector, tourism promotion, and constructive engagement of both sides in exploring new projects and areas of cooperation. Today, Norway and Ukraine agreed to further develop and strengthen the existing bilateral economic cooperation in the already established fields and continue to explore new opportunities for cooperation in such areas as fisheries, aquaculture, construction, industry, textile manufacturing, high-tech sector, and other spheres. The Norwegian side reaffirmed Norway's commitment to continue to support Ukraine's reform efforts and underlined the importance of reliable investment conditions and intensified reform implementation. The Ukrainian side reiterated Ukraine's commitment to continue creating favorable and predictable framework conditions for increased trade and investment, including by accelerating reform process and strengthening anti-corruption measures. Ladies and gentlemen, for Norwegian export companies, succeeding in international competition is demanding even in a normal situation, and the corona crisis has created new challenges. Last week, the Norwegian government launched a new export action plan that highlights the need for the government to build closer relationships with the industry and the companies. The plan announces a new unit for export promotion named Business Norway, setting aside 100 million Norwegian kroner to promote export. The government hopes to assist in rebuilding Norwegian business affected by the crisis and highlights the need to focus on untapped potential in growing markets such as Ukraine. I'm very confident that the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce will explore this opportunity and continue to be a constructive and effective partner for the governments in their wish to further develop and strengthen the bilateral economic cooperation built on predictable and stable framework conditions. So I would like to, with these words, wish you good luck with the discussions this afternoon. And then I have the pleasure of introducing the Ukrainian co-chair of the Bilateral Economic Commission, the Minister for Culture and Information Policy, Mr. Alexander Tkachenko. He is appearing online, I hope.
Yeah.
Please.
It's a great pleasure, and I'm incredibly pleased to welcome you today and praised for your bravery to continue discussion, even in the current circumstances online, which definitely means the importance of our relationship and express the hope of further development of mutual beneficiary economic relationships. As you know, we have today a significant event, third session of Ukrainian Norwegian Intergovernment Commission on Trade, Business and Economic Cooperation. In my capacity as co-chair of Ukrainian part of Commission, I'm very delighted to share with you some results, but let first of all reflect some important points. Norway is a very special partner for Ukraine, not only because of historical roots coming to the ages of Vikings and our connections during the times of Kievan Rus, but also because Ukrainians and Norwegians have deeply sympathy to each other and definitely common values. We highly value Norway's consistent political support on different levels and of course of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. Also appreciate the substantial economic foundation of our cooperation with Norway. In the last few years, Ukraine has created an effective institutional framework to facilitate economic exchange with its foreign partners, Office of National Investment Council, Ukraine Investment Promotion Office, Export Promotion Office, Council of Exporters and Investors under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That structures will be ready to support activities of Norwegian companies. In this regard, I would like to inform you about the draft of the law of 3760, so-called investment nannies, which provides the introduction of state support for projects of significant investment, more than 30 million euros in the fields of processing, infrastructure, logistics, waste management, tourism, health, education, sport. During today's session, both sides noted a steady progress in bilateral economic cooperation achieved during the past several years, including the growth of trade, implementation of the first large-scale investment projects by Norwegian companies in the renewable energy, as well as other projects in initiatives in different sectors addressing energy efficiency, seafood trade, IT, and tourism. We identified several short-term priorities in order to support further development of economic cooperation. And I would like personally mention quite good spirit of this session and understanding of those problems we are facing and will to solve it, and also possibilities that we really do have in different spheres, including even we discussed Viking ships that can travel through Dnieper River in the future. Today we also agreed to continue exploring new opportunities such as fisheries, agriculture, construction industry, textile manufacturing, high-tech sector, and other spheres. This connection will also follow in with great attention on ongoing consultations between the Ukrainian and Norwegian aerospace agencies and companies and their eventual project for mutual beneficial cooperation in this area. Therefore, I strongly believe that importance of joint efforts has become even more crucial in those days for both Ukraine and Norway. and really appreciate of joining you and wish you a successful business meetings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for those very positive remarks about the economic cooperation between Norway and Ukraine. And later in the next session, we will hear from the Norwegian co-chair of the Commission as well. Now we're going to have a panel discussion here in Kyiv. The excellent panel has been put together by the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. And we are very happy to have as moderator of the panel, Mr. Pavlo Sheremeta, who is probably most known in Norway, at least, as a former Minister of Economic Development and Trade back in 2014. And he has also been president of the Kyiv School of Economics, actually. So without further ado, Mr. Sheremeta, I will leave the floor and the panel to you and the discussion.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, the ministers, I'm so happy to see that the work, the bilateral work is continuing despite of all the calamities in the world, and it's great to see. I will be very brief with my introductory remarks because we have just 40 minutes. I like it. We have at the moment, well, actually everybody's here, so we have 5 participants. So for 5 participants, 40 minutes is not too much, but it's good because we will keep it businesslike and brief. Let me briefly, quickly introduce the panelists. Let me start with Maria Barabash, the Executive Director of the Office of Simple Solutions and Results. I understand it's at the Office of the President of Ukraine. Dmytro Senechenko, I want to introduce you. Next one, you are the head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Serhiy Tivkach, thank you for joining us, Executive Director of Ukraine Invest. Dmytro Livch, the expert of economic reform in Ukraine at Easy Business, that's the NGO, and the Civita, which is, I may say, the kind of, in a way, a Scandinavian consulting company, quite famous in the region. And Christian Andersson, last but not least, because we will start with you. And the reason we start with you, you are the chairman of the chairperson of the management board of CEB in SEB Bank in Ukraine. The reason we start with you is actually, I mean, it's under the auspices of the Chamber of Commerce, isn't it? So let's start with commerce and then let the government officials basically respond and reflect on what you say. So, Christian, if I may ask you, Mr. Andersson, what are the main challenges that you face here in Ukraine and how you overcome them?
Thank you very much. First, I just want to mention, I come from SEB, which is a Swedish bank, and we are the only Nordic bank here in Ukraine. Here we work with our home market clients, so in particular Scandinavian, German, and Baltic clients. That's what we do here in Ukraine. So what business needs to invest and prosper here in Ukraine? I would like to mention there are 3 main things that Scandinavian clients, corporate clients, usually ask me about when they call to us. Typically companies that are not already here, and they want to know a little bit more about Ukraine, and they have questions. And the first one is rule of law and corruption. The second one is stability in financial markets, interest rates, exchange rates, etc. And the third one is the conflict in East Ukraine. These are the main questions, I would say, that Scandinavian companies have. And if we start with the conflict, it is what it is. I mean, there is no quick solution that can be seen there. On the other hand, it's more or less a frozen conflict. It's relatively stable, if you can say stable, about armed conflicts. And I think investors are quite well informed and gotten used to it. And it's not so big concern for their business today as it was a few years ago. Second item, financial markets here in Ukraine. Here I would say that we have seen quite a remarkable improvement since revolution in 2014. And that goes for both financial stability and corporate governance. The work in particular that has been done by the central bank, together with IMF and other institutions, in cleaning up the banking market, closing around 100 banks, it used to be 185 banks here, establishing a floating exchange rate that also is fairly stable as of today. These are all major achievements that should be recognized and applauded. In addition, they have introduced more financial instruments possible to use that improves the market, refinancing, synthetic loans, etc. Corporate governance efficiency remains a topic, in particular in the state-owned banks, if looking at the banking market. These are 4, but they constitute more than 50% of the market share here in terms of assets. However, we see and expect that governance is on a track to improve also in those banks. These facts, together with the macroeconomic stability that they have achieved, have made the banking sector and financial markets much more sustainable if comparing just a few years back. I've been here 12 years, so I've been here through the crisis starting in 2008 and see the difference now compared to previous crises. And you can also see it now during the corona crisis. We haven't seen any panic at all in private individuals withdrawing deposits, etc. This was typically seen in previous crises. When looking at the banking market, I also want to mention for you, especially in Norway, so you understand that it's very small here in Ukraine. If you add assets of all the banks that exist here in Ukraine, it's roughly 20% of SEB Group's assets. And as you know, we are not a mega bank. We are a kind of a medium-sized European bank. So the banking market is very, very small. The third thing, which is the real problem, that is the rule of law and corruption. This we still see as a major obstacle for investments, and in particular in the court systems. We have seen improvements regarding corruption in some institutions. As example, I can say ourselves, when we have dealt with tax administration, it's now has been very good the last couple of times. It used to be a nightmare 6-7 years ago. So there we have seen big improvements. But we hear from our clients different opinions about other institutions like customs, etc. So to conclude, I just want to say the following, that if you are an investor thinking of coming here, it's very important that you are aware of that Ukraine has an economy, it is in transition. That means that it's frequently changing environment. Rules and regulations change very rapidly here. It's important that you take legal and financial advice if you consider coming here and have someone to discuss with. And my advice for you would be to keep an eye on particularly the 3 following items going forward. 1, the cooperation with IMF. It's extremely important that this continues, not only because of the money, but also because IMF is pushing reforms. And they also safeguard the reforms already done. Second item is the central bank. Maybe the institution that developed best of all after the revolution. Politicians need to leave them alone and let them be an independent institution. And here are some worrying signs about this. So please follow that as well. And the third thing is what happens with judicial reforms. Here things need to happen, and a lot of things. Transparency of operations, selection of judges, courts renewed and screened, etc. It's a lot of things that needs to be improved there. But having said that, I also want to say that I like and love this country very much. Otherwise, I would never have stayed here 12 years. You have a lot of opportunities and the potential is high in Ukraine. It's definitely so. You have, especially the younger generation is very well educated and very ambitious. But here are some challenges that they have to deal with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. You actually, you covered and you almost answered already the question that I would have, because the question that I would have, in a way, I'm your colleague, being the board member, the independent board member at Raiffeisen Aval. And our Austrian colleagues, the first question that they would have at the board meeting would be, so what are the news about IMF? Because IMF is needed, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong or you have a different perspective on that. IMF we need not because we need more into the reserves at the moment, because reserves are at the moment quite sufficient, but it's the stamp of approval in many ways. So there are discussions at the moment with IMF. I know that the chair of the central bank just went to Washington, D.C. Any news, anything on that front?
I don't have any news. I agree with you 100%. It's not about the money so much. It's good as well, of course, but it's particular IMF is pushing reforms. And I'm afraid, to be honest, that not so much would happen if you wouldn't have this cooperation agreement with IMF. I don't expect any second tranche this year. I know that some people in the central bank, I think the chairman or the governor made some statement that he was hoping them to come before year end. I don't have any inside information, but I speak with IMF, of course. They have a Swedish representative here in Ukraine. But I don't have any specific information.
But at least, you were quite straightforward, and I think I absolutely agree with you that you said that's the thing to watch. And actually, it covers both the IMF and the central bank.
True.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Let's move to Maria Barabash. But first of all, Maria, any reflection on what we just heard? The office that you're heading has a very Nordic, I would say, name, no nonsense, simple solutions and results.
Very
so, so my question to you foremost would be, what are these simple solutions, and especially where are the results?
Thank you, Pavlo. This actually, I would like to continue, Mr. Anderson, that you were talking about the reforms that are needed to have a rule of law, have the financial stability, IMF program in place. So our office was founded only 6 months ago, so we are quite new, but we are very fast. Comparing, for example, with the previous National Reforms Council office, it took them to have the office in the conception of the office in 9 months, but the office ran only for 8 months. So we are already for 6 months. The office is the leader of the office is President Saakashvili, with all his brilliant energy and a lot of ideas and a lot of enthusiasm to drive the reforms. We did a lot regarding the results. We have supported and drafted and registered in Parliament 5 laws already on deregulation in different spheres. So it's all about easy business. So our main goal of the office is to have Ukraine in top 20 of the doing business rating. So this is our main goal. And we do everything for that. Also, why I talked about the speed, because I truly believe that the winners now are not the strongest but the fastest. As our world is changing so quickly, so we need to react proactively to all these changes. Second, our achievement, I would say, is that we have created a very effective communication hub within the Office of the President, the Parliament, the Cabinet of Ministers, business associations, because our National Reforms Council is the only platform that unites all the stakeholders that I mentioned, including also other Secret Service and other authorities. And the third that we have already done and accomplished is an independent check of the registered in the Parliament bills. So it's called Watchdog, and every week we check. Our independent team is checking a lot of draft laws that are registered in the Parliament. It's very useful for the members of the parliament, and it's very popular. Also, one of the accomplishments is that in 6 months that we are already working, we have secured financing from the business association and business entrepreneurs, and it's actually the first ever in Ukraine office NGO that is financed totally by business with such high level of influence and participations and leadership, and for sure, when as we have already secured the support from the business, now we're talking to international partners also to support, because we are not quite yet, we're already 6 months old. And regarding the priorities that we planned in the next year, now we actually are communicating and discussing our priorities with the business associations, what they see as the priorities for the reforms in Ukraine. So to have this agenda in place from business, from other authorities, and from civil society for sure. Second, we would like to have about 50 laws registered in the next 6 months. So as we are already in full speed, so we can do it and draft it very quickly. We have 25 full staff members, lawyers, with some of them we take from Brussels, from New York, from Amsterdam, that are very professional to draft the laws. And third priority for us is for sure to speed up reforms, to make it as fast as possible, and to make it also in a holistic approach, not to have it like one small part that is implemented, but to have it in a complex way, and to make it like a national scale reforms.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. And just a few remarks and one clarifying question, if I may. It's great, of course, that that your Office of Simple Solutions and Results are chaired by legendary the former president of Georgia. You say that our goal is to be in the top 20. Let's not forget that Georgia was in the top 10, and I don't want to shoot less than that. We should be more ambitious, not less ambitious.
We would be happy.
Okay. Now, given his experience and your experience, that's number one. Number two, and that worries me, and that would be my clarifying question. Your speed is quite impressive. I mean, what you have just said. 5 laws already in the drafts are already in the parliament. Any speculation, any forecast, when will they be adopted? Because now is actually a good time when the president still controls, hopefully he still controls his party and his faction in the parliament. They were pretty fast a year ago with this turbo mode, by the way, tightening the screws for business. Now it's time to untighten, to release. Ukraine remains, let me put it in diplomatic terms, Ukraine has to do a lot to ensure the economic freedom here. It's good that your laws are already there. Are you working to ensure the coalition to push it through in the parliament?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. One of the 3 of the laws are already ready for the committee meeting, because what we have here in the office of the president and in the parliament, how we face it, how it's working. The president Zelensky has full enthusiasm and power and the willingness to do the reforms as fast as possible. But unfortunately, not everything is dependent on him. So he has all these bureaucratic procedures to be in place, because, for example, to register and to have one law ready for the only committee meeting, you need to have about 12 papers from different authorities, from different even like sectors, like very bureaucratic procedure, and it takes time, unfortunately. Yes, we're speeding up that. That's why our office is in place. So we are here to help and to speed it up. But we expect that all these 5 laws will be implemented until the end of this year.
Good.
So hopefully.
Good. I guess, I mean, given the challenges that you have just described, I think maybe the office needs to be renamed a little bit, the Office of Simple but Not Easy Solutions, and the results. Thank you, Maria. Look, those people who are following us and listening and watching us, please know that you can ask your questions in YouTube and Zoom and Facebook. And we are reading your questions, and hopefully we will have maybe 3 or 4 minutes at the end of the session. We have 20 minutes left, by the way, so I will speed it up a little bit. Dmytro Senichenko, can I go to you? Because your office delivers the results pretty much, at least from what I see, the head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine.
Thank you, Paulo, for the compliments. We are trying to deliver. Your Excellencies, ambassadors, dear ladies and friends, glad to be here with you. It's a nice discussion. We have these discussions almost every day in the State Property Fund. We are changing institution itself to be more business-oriented, more open, more transparent. I will start with the policy, because State Property Fund is the central executive body that implements the policy. So first of all, the policy is created on the level of President, Parliament, and government. We do have exceeding number of state-owned enterprises in Ukraine and other state assets that are creating the largest source of corruption, that are financing the next political cycle. And the policy is now to get rid on the exceeding number of state-owned enterprises to deliver them in a transparent way to the market for the private investor. A few figures. We have in Ukraine 3,664 state-owned enterprises, 3,600 state-owned enterprises that are managed by 96 state-owned bodies. So you can imagine all this unmanageable stuff, which is creating losses, inefficiency. That's why the policy and corruption, this is the source of corruption. The policy that we are realizing is to organize transparent procedures to put it on the market. And we have been confirmed by this policy that Parliament of Ukraine voted the law that canceled this list of prohibited for privatization 1,400 companies. Now the government of Ukraine transferred to the State Property Fund for privatization more than 500 companies. And we have established completely new, completely open procedures. What we have now, instead of the documents that were printed in paper, the magazine issued what will happen and when with the privatization, that was printed in 400 copies for all Ukrainian. Now we have internet website, privatization.gov.ua, with some part of it in English already, where we put all the list of numbers, assets to be privatized. Since the beginning of this year, we conducted 2,000 auctions, and we exceeded the revenue budget from the privatization 5 times in the coronavirus period in June. Now, I just came here from the meeting with Prime Minister, and you can see on the website of Cabinet of Ministers that he supported this once again. So we are speeding up. We are working together with Office with Simple and Effective Solutions. And we drafted a new law, completely new law that will give more guarantees, will give better speed, English law, and a lot of instruments for the investors. And the main goal of this is to get rid of the exceeding assets and also attract investments. So this is two-way road. We didn't have enough resources to market it, but we are working here with our colleagues from the Ukraine Invest. You will have interesting information also to look in the investment menu that we prepared, digest, yes. So it's indeed something that not happened within the history of Ukraine for 29 years. Mr. Anderson correctly mentioned that Ukraine is a promising country and the youth is growing. I am 46, I want it to be not only promising, but delivering. That's why we came from business to the civil service to do some job and then to go back to business, hopefully. That's why we should turn our promising natural resources, geopolitical situation, educated people into some delivery results. That's why we are working together. Prime Minister is supporting privatization, President is supporting. We will see how the government will react now on this law, because this will be a real revolution to free the extra assets, but it will have big resistance from the people who are using these state-owned enterprises in their own personal needs. So this is a clash of civilizations, and we are at the break-even point. We are trying to do our best to move forward and deliver a result that we already did some. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmytro. And actually, talking of clash of civilizations and relating to what Mr. Anderson mentioned at the beginning, he mentioned one of the gravest concerns that especially foreign investors have, and that's rule of law and corruption. And you're fighting that, I understand, on a daily basis. I mean, there are some very noisy, in a good way, cases that you actually brought up, that people were trying to bribe the state property fund, and you called the police and brought it up to the light and to the police and to the into the investigation. How's it going? How is that fight?
Yes, indeed. Together with National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, we caught a few guys who are trying to promise to give us some bribes time to time, not to privatize or appoint somebody. The first case was when they were giving me $5 million, and we got in cash $200,000. Now they're under the investigation, and they will be in jail because it's a NABU.
And they brought 200. I mean,
it's
not that you
advance
got
payment. Yes. And now this case is listening in the anti-corruption court, which is one of the courts that is reformed, and there will be results. But they didn't understand our approach. They tried to bribe me second time with $800,000. We caught them again together with NABU, and they are again in jail. So waiting for the third case. Because privatization is also a source for bringing money to the budget, but getting corrupted people with cash, it's also we're bringing them to the budget. Also.
So you're getting the money in different ways. That's good. But look, jokes aside, I guess that's the best way to fight corruption, is just to bring the light and bring the investigations into it. Serhiy Tsivkach, well, thank you for joining us just right on time. You joined the Ukraine Invest quite recently, and I guess right on time too. I met some of your colleagues, I should say former colleagues, because I know that you are reorganizing, you're quite busy reorganizing this Ukraine Invest agency. Please give us some perspective on Ukraine Invest mission, results, and restructuring, which is led by you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would start with probably answering your question or your suggestion to Norwegian businesses that they should have like a guide when they enter Ukraine in terms of advice, in terms of support. So I can say that this guide is Ukraine Invest. We're always open, and our services are completely free of charge. We are part of government, and we are happy to support any initiatives and provide guidance, beginning with basic consultancy, aftercare support, troubleshooting, and so on. In terms of Ukraine Invest, maybe I'll just say a couple of words about regulatory policy, what's happening, because we had some good updates, actually. And when you're saying that our regulatory policy is quite kind of fast pace of changing, it's a good way as well, because we have a lot of changes like concession law, land law, privatization started. We also have the improvement of competition in energy market, in natural gas and electricity market. We have a government deregulation plan that was accepted and now is being implemented. Common transit procedure, EU best practices for protection of IP rights, and so on and so on. We also have very good and strong initiatives like Draft Law 3760. This draft law provides for incentives for big investments, and it will probably pass its second reading before the end of this year. We hope so. And threshold for investment will be from 20 or 30 million euros, and investors will be able to get of up to 30% in state aid out of investment made into Ukraine. So it's quite significant. Tax relief, connection to grids, land leases, and so on, and custom duties relief, and so on and so on. Also, I hope that before the end of this year, another two important draft laws will be passed. I'm talking about Draft Law 3724, 3725 on industrial parks. This could become our economic kind of engine drive. And looking at the experience of Poland, Turkey, Czech Republic, other countries, they attracted tens and billions of dollars into these structures of industrial parks. So we are working with Parliament as well, and we hope that these laws will be passed. And things like e-residency, competition law reform, all these good things, they are in the pipeline, and we expect them to be, passed in due course. In terms of Ukraine Invest, we are reorganizing, yes, you are quite right, because from our point of view, Ukraine Invest mission is to help all levels of bodies that are responsible for investments in Ukraine to start operate effectively. It's very important to launch competition between Ukrainian regions for investors, because sometimes from our experience, when investors come to Kiev at central level, they are met well by central authorities. They are very happy with service they get from authorities, from us, from other institutions. But sometimes when they go to the regions, it's a very different perspective. So they need to feel comfortable, not only at central level, but also in the regions of Ukraine. And we are launching a program that will be formed from several parts, like advocacy campaign, educational campaign, monitoring campaign, ranking campaign, that will ensure that investors that come to us will be navigated and sent to best regions in Ukraine in terms of, ease of doing business, so to say, our kind of internal business rating. Also, Ukraine Invest was established initially in 2016, but we do not have a single foreign office as of today. And we need to improve that situation. It's hard for us to open like full-scale representative office abroad. Like Poland, they have over 20, Latvia have over 20 as well, Ireland and other countries. And we need to follow the case as well. So we're looking at different ways how to do that. There are three possibilities for us, and we're already actively working there. So one is Ministry of Foreign Affairs and system of embassies throughout the world. It's a very quick solution, low-hanging fruit. Second, Ukrainian diaspora. We're working with them and with Ukrainian World Congress and our business and economic and political ambassadors throughout the world. We have weekly calls with them. We are about to enter into a specific roadmap and plan. And the third one, cooperation with business associations in target countries, because they know better what business needs and how to make their business at home more interested in Ukraine. So these are three ways how we do in our kind of interaction with the world campaign. Also, we improve in our communication strategy. COVID-19 for us, yes, okay, one of the last messages, COVID-19 for us is, it's a problem that caused economic crisis, not only in Ukraine, but also throughout the world, because over 170 countries worldwide will face negative GDP growth. But we look at this as a catalyst for positive change. So now there is no, exclusion, for us, not to deliver. And we will be creating programs, targeted programs that will have like kind of a multiple effect for attraction of investment, industry relocation, supporting SMEs, working on 3760 to make it more kind of broad in terms of application, protecting rights of creditors, making the process of employing foreign persons in Ukraine more easy, and so on and so on. We have like full pipeline of these projects. Also, very important to say about results of our work. Since August 2020, we have attracted and unlocked foreign investors in amount of investments in amount of $275 million. So that's a good result for us, but we are looking at our plans for 2021. We have a lot of ideas, and we count on support of all our partners
and Norwegian companies. Thank you, Serhiy. Dmytro Livch, basically summing it up, because you are an expert on primarily on easy business, and easy business was mentioned with small e and small b was mentioned many times. What's your reflection, and what is your advice to the government on that matter? Dmytro Livch.
Thanks a lot, Pavlo. It's a great honor to speak to the panel. Easy Business is an economic policy free market think tank. We started right after Revolution of Dignity in 2014 as a group of advisors to Pavlo Sheremeta, and he's been acting as Minister of Economic Development and Trade. And we continue our fight for a better business enabling environment in Ukraine in terms of implementation of structural reforms like land market reform or privatization, or business climate improvement in Ukraine and deregulation. I see the big potential for Ukraine. Ukraine is a promising country. Ukraine is a frontier of European Union market and the European continent market. But still, we need to become an investment powerhouse over the course of the next years in order to realize our full potential of geographic location, of natural resources, of human capital that is in place in Ukraine. All of the speakers are highlighting the same things about rule of law, about investment climate, about deregulation. This is all good, but still Ukraine brought only 5.8 billion of foreign direct investment over the last year, compared to Poland, which is 3 times lower. Gross capital formation for Ukraine was $49 billion for the last 30 years. Compared to Poland, it's 7 times lower. So it means that we have a great potential to attract foreign direct investment to Ukrainian economy. And bilateral cooperation with Norway and European Union, US, Canada, and all the friends of Ukraine is very crucial for the further economic development of Ukraine. In order to stimulate economic growth, we need to bring foreign direct investment. We need to decrease the regulatory and tax burden to Ukrainian economy. We need to stimulate Ukrainian trade with our partners. And according to International Trade Center, we under trade for 49% in terms of current bilateral and multilateral trade agreements with our partners. This means that structural reforms like land market reform or land market liberalization, privatization, deregulation needs to continue further in order to attract more investment into Ukrainian economy, in order to stimulate foreign trade, in order to stimulate the gross capital formation in the Ukrainian economy.
Good. I mean, it's a good perspective. The first 3 steps maybe 2 steps that you recommend to be taken now.
The first step is foreign direct investment attraction. There is a global trend of regionalization and transition of production hubs to countries that are closer to consumer market. So the first step.
What needs to be done in Ukraine for that?
What needs to be done? It's continuous work of Ukraine Invest, continuous work of State Property Fund, Law 3760, which is really important for attraction
Sure,
of.
our Norway friends have no clue what I don't know what 3760 is. I mean, what law is that?
It's investment tennis.
Investment?
It's investment tennis. It's about.
All right.
Yes.
Yes. So
incentives for big
I mean,
investment.
let's put it clear. I mean, in the plain language, there is a draft in the parliament that
Yes.
simplifies the magnets and amplifies the magnets for
Yes.
the investment into Ukraine. Okay.
Yeah, so it's about tax incentives, it's about regulatory incentives, it's
Good,
about
good.
the attraction of the foreign capital into Ukrainian market.
Good. Good. Just for our viewers, by the way, we have 5 minutes left. For our viewers, as I said, and my last reminder, you can ask your questions. I understand you can do it on the Facebook profile and YouTube page of Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. And Kristen, we already have the question to you. Mr. Anderson, among all Scandinavian companies entering the Ukrainian market, what sectors do you see the most growth in from your bank? And what sectors do you expect to grow in the nearest 2 to 3 years?
Well, where we have seen the most growth, if looking back a couple of years, I mean, that is in the high-tech industry. We have a number of Swedish and also Norwegian and other Scandinavian companies that has established them here, typically starting with software development and then building on that in the IT sector. However, I think if looking at the sectors here, there should be very good opportunities in I would say in most sectors, and we see it very diverse from heavy industry to furniture and it's a very wide spectrum. But if I should single out one where we have seen a lot, that is the technology sector.
Good. There is one more question that I want to address to two of you, Dmytro Livch and Serhiy. That's you mentioned the land market reform. What is the estimate of the size of investments this reform can unlock, both national and foreign? You guys, who wants to pick up that? Dmytro?
It's up to $10 billion over the course of the next 10 years in terms of investment in land market, irrigation, and agricultural business in Ukraine.
Yeah, these figures are well appropriate, but we need to understand that it's very hard to give estimate now, because it's a kind of a long process to implement this reform. This reform is implemented in stages, and we have things like, Constitutional Court and, that possible review as well. So we need to, at this very moment, we need to protect this achievement. This is very important. And then work on practical implementation, and it will bring result. But I would like to stress out again that without effective regions of Ukraine, specifically and when this decentralization reform was complete, after these elections, it's very important that Ukrainian regions pay more attention to investors. They educate themselves, they promote themselves, and they get best practices, and we will be there to help. But we cannot, as Ukrainian West, and even as government of Ukraine, replace these responsibilities, because it's about regions.
Good
as well.
Good. Thank you, Serhiy. Just Dmytro and Maria, to finish with you, to finish the session with you, Dmytro. Any specific actions, immediate actions that the State Property Fund, any objects, any whatever that you are privatizing now that might be of interest to Norwegian investors?
Yes, we have first very important and easy decision for Parliament to cancel the law that they somehow voted in March, that the big privatization cannot be put on the auction. So we have prepared several assets, and we have a demand. We have instant demand, the request to our privatization advisors who are Big Four companies and investment bank that we do feel this interest that the parliament should adopt this law, allow government to start big privatization. Secondly, that we are having all these assets for like investment menu in the possession of 96 state bodies. There should be strong political will to be continued, to be transferred of these exceeding assets to the state property fund for the privatization. Because we as a state property fund, we have done all processes, virtual data room where everybody can go look on the documents, online auctions, etc. So instrument is ready, political will should be supported by real actions of the government and parliament.
But other specific lots that you're already allocating now that might be of interest to Norwegian investors, just being pragmatic.
Slots. Now we are so till the last until this year, Ukraine and Belarus were the only countries where there was a state monopoly for spirits production. Now it's a demonopolization. Today we have sold already 2 hours ago. The auction finished. 120 million hryvnia were paid like 2 hours ago. The winner win. So this will be continued, and 78 distilleries will be put on the market till the next summer. So these are not only for the spirit production. This is bioethanol and everything like brown fields you can use with the roads, electricity, and production. We also have an investment menu consist on the real estate assets, hotels, hospitality. This might be attractive for the international investors. We have the big privatization, which is machinery building and chemical production, iron ore, titanium iron ore company. We have completed with BDO, Baker McKinsey. The due diligence will be put on the market beginning of the next year. Look on the website, privatization.gov.ua, and send your letters of interest with no obligation, We need your voice of business. We need that you will say, guys, we would invest in your country, but please show us what do you have. Having your letters, we will then bring them to the parliament saying, guys, this is the demand of from the business. There is a demand. Don't stop privatization. So we always have to heat it up. That's why every day I'm meeting with business associations, etc.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dmitro. I need to speed up a little bit, and we have Maria left out, and it shouldn't be the case. But Maria, probably the toughest question goes to you. There is a lot of concern and pain that I see also from the questions regarding the renewable energy. Some Norwegian companies invested obviously into it, and they say it's turmoil there over a year. I don't know, maybe you want to have Serhij's help on that. Any reflection on that, and please give the closing remarks.
Yeah, I know everything about that because previously I was the founder of the biggest Ukrainian renewable energy forum, and we had a lot of Norwegian companies attending, hundreds of investors that came to see and the projects for one day, just to come to Kiev and to explore the opportunities. Our strong position of our office and of Mr. Saakashvili is that there should be no retroactive changes. So the promises of the government should be in place because if we're not talking only about renewables, there are a lot of other sectors that will be also touched by this renewable energy sector. So it's building, it's equipments, it's services companies, banks, and other financial organizations that are involved in this sector. So we hope that in the next budget there will be guarantee law on this specific question, because there is a huge deficit in the guarantee buyer balance sheet. So we hope that it will help and it will be in place till the second hearing of the budget. And also I would recommend for Sergey from Ukraine Invest to have the experience from Business Norway, Business Sweden, Business France, and there are Business Ireland. So, but most of them Business Sweden and Business Norway, because from my experience, they're the most effective investment protection and promotion agency that I faced because of the very effective way of cooperation. So actually, I would my dream is to have Business Ukraine agency here in the format of the most European countries we have. So and this will help.
And this will help. Maria, thank you very much. It was a terrific panel. Christian Andersson, Maria Barabash, Your Excellency, Ambassador Eric Svedal, Dmitro Livch, Dmitro Senichenko, and Serhiy Tivkach. Thank you very much. And I understand, Mr. Ambassador, you want to, yes, please.
Yes, I
please
also just want to say thank you to the excellent panel. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for putting it together. Thank you, Pavlo, for excellent moderation. I think this was very, very interesting, very informative, very useful, and to be honest, quite positive. And I hope the viewers in Oslo think the same. Thank you also to the guys behind the camera and the technical support. And I hand over to you in Oslo for the second session. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready? Yes. Thank you. So everyone, good afternoon from Oslo. And on behalf of the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and our partners for this event, Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries, Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ukrainian Embassy in Oslo, and the Norwegian Embassy in Kiev, very happy to welcome you to the second part of this online event, which we've named Emerging Ukraine. My name is Kjetil Bø. I'm the chairman of the chamber. I am a partner in the law firm Ludvig Rein, and we have been in the chamber from the start. We're a founding member, and I am myself been on the board since inception. We were in fact supposed to host you in Oslo today, but because of the strengthened corona restrictions in Oslo, that was not possible. And we've switched to this digital format, which so far we think is working wonderfully. I'm very happy we managed to gather so many participants, listeners, and viewers today. Following up on the previous sessions, first of all, thank you very much for a very inspiring session. And thank you for our partners on the ground in Ukraine for shedding more light on what is happening on the ground and the status of reforms and the work that's being done. I'm noticed particularly 2 points, which I think echo some of our sentiments. We started the chamber almost 12 years ago. Ukraine was promising then, we still think it is. But I loved also someone demanding delivery, which we also want to see. So keeping up the hope and the expectations, believing in the promise, but also delivering, that's going to be our common goal. The pandemic has changed our lives, and we have had to adapt to new ways of working and communicating together. And I think this seminar is a good example of how we can do that. And in the chamber, we have focused on keeping up our activities and keeping relevance on these new platforms. We think that is essential for keeping everything together through the current situation, but also in the future, being able to be even more agile, even be even more accessible than we have been in the past. So this is not something that is going to be temporary. We are going to continue to work in different ways going forward. We will now turn to the next session, where we will continue to focus on bilateral trade possibilities between Norway and Ukraine, and see how we can unlock further potential in the different sectors. Therefore, we are very happy and delighted to have our, I would say, a very good friend and ally, His Excellency Mr. Vyacheslav Yatsuk, the Ukrainian ambassador to Norway, with us today, and to open this plenary session and give some of his insights. We hope that his commitment will continue to be there and strengthen the interest among Ukrainian and Norwegian business. So please, Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bø, and also thank you and your team at NUK for our always good cooperation, including in preparing our today's event. Madam Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege for me to welcome you at the second part of our important event in the Ukrainian-Norwegian business dialogue. It takes place against the background of challenging times. COVID-19 is only one of the challenges, and many of us know that maybe not the most daunting. However, it is highly likely that our ancestors from the medieval Norwegian kingdom and the Kiev Rus realm would disagree that our today's problems should prevent us from thinking big and daring new accomplishments. They could quite legitimately say, listen, we didn't have any vaccines at all, nor any laboratories for them. We didn't have electric ships. We didn't have the internet and digital platforms. It is true that we had Bluetooth, but that was the nickname of one of our short-lived kings, and we would not recommend to rely on him too much. I hope you understand the perspective from which you are invited to look at the rapidly evolving partnership between Ukraine and Norway. Despite no less challenging times, our ancestors succeeded to create the Kiev Rus. That was one of the most advanced state formations in the medieval Europe. And they also created the great trade route from the Varangians to the Greeks. That was our joint ownership, and that was no less glorious than the famous Silk Road. That success story was based on trade and commerce, and it was achieved through the synergy and engagement of the local people of modern Ukraine and the most daring Scandinavians, many of whom were from modern Norway. Today, Ukraine and Norway have all the prerequisites to repeat that shared success. Ukraine and Norway are quite unique and most rewarding partners for each other. Our economies are to a very large extent mutually complementary. Our strengths and advantages are mutually reinforcing. All this is convincingly proved by the impressive progress achieved in our bilateral cooperation in a very short period of time in the last few years. Just consider the facts. In only 3 years' time, Ukraine and Norway have almost doubled their bilateral trade. We have started to implement first large investment projects. Substantial part of our bilateral cooperation already now involves such highly sophisticated industries such as renewable energy or IT. And recently, Ukraine and Norway have even started to talk seriously about eventual joint projects in the aerospace sector. It is true that we are only at the beginning of a really meaningful cooperation. It is also true that both Ukraine and Norway should do more in order to remove obstacles to further growth of their business ties. We in Ukraine continue our persistent efforts to ensure a level playing field for business and investment activities. But it is also highly likely that we are at the beginning of something big, of a new important success story. And first and foremost, it is the companies and investors of Norway and Ukraine who are the real engines of its development. In order to speed up this success story, what is really needed and expected today from the Norwegian and Ukrainian businesses is their deeper engagement, more manifestations of entrepreneurial spirit, their resilience against temporary downturns. And yes, we need much better information sharing about opportunities offered by our two economies. One of the biggest obstacles to the expansion of our cooperation is that many Norwegian businesses are simply not aware or misinformed about the opportunities in Ukraine. In these endeavors, our respective businesses may rely on full support of the political leadership of our two countries. This was clearly confirmed by the results of today's meeting of our bilateral intergovernmental commission on economic cooperation. The government of Ukraine highly values our close and constructive dialogue with the government of Norway aimed at supporting and streamlining our economic cooperation. I would like to use this opportunity to express Ukraine's particular gratitude to Minister of Trade and Industry, Iselin Nybø, for her personal deep involvement into enhancement of our economic ties. I wish all of us productive and result-oriented discussion in the second part of our forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I will then just like to thank you again for your good cooperation, and I will now pass the word to the Norwegian Minister of Trade and Industry, Ms. Iselin Nybø. Madam Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Ambassadors, dear friends in Ukraine and Norway, hello from Oslo. It is a pleasure for me to attend this digital seminar. And let me first thank the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to this event, and also Vikborg Rein for supporting this seminar. Norway and Ukraine are long-standing partners in trade and business. Norway was among the first to recognize Ukraine as an independent nation 29 years ago. 6 years ago, we established an intergovernmental economic commission with the aim of developing business, trade, and economic cooperation between our two countries. Norway has commissions with several countries, but the one with Ukraine is among those few that are headed at political level. Today is a good day to promote Norwegian-Ukrainian business cooperation. Earlier today, my Ukrainian counterpart, the Minister of Culture, and I held the first ever digital commission meeting between Norway and Ukraine. It was a short but constructive meeting, and I would like to share some of my main messages with you here today. Trade and investment between Norway and Ukraine are on a very encouraging path. Bilateral trade in goods is steadily growing, and last year Norway was the largest foreign investor in the Ukrainian market. Ukraine is also an important market for services, especially in the ICT sector, and seafood is still our main export to Ukraine. Let me also mention the potential for bilateral cooperation in the aerospace industry. This was also brought to the table during our meeting earlier today. Even though the overall picture is positive, there is a potential for more trade and economic activity between our countries. Ukraine has done an impressive job so far in promoting reform and European integration, and Norway supports this work. But there is still more to be done, and only when reforms are fully implemented may we see the practical results. In the meeting this morning, I stressed that a continued reform process is key to attracting businesses to Ukraine. Without a level playing field, I believe few Norwegian companies are willing to invest their money, their people, and their technology there. Because it is clear that all foreign companies and investors would like to see a business environment that is fair, predictable, and competitive. In this regard, fighting corruption is essentially, and it's especially vital in order to attract foreign investments. Today, my counterpart and I agreed to hold the next Commission meeting in Kiev in 2021. when we hope that the situation is back to Norway and normal. We are both very eager to start traveling again. By then, I hope to see a more predictable and open Ukraine. I hope to see increased and more variation in trade and more business-to-business cooperation. And on this hopeful note for the future, I wish you all a good seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Nybø. We are very happy to hear that it's a cooperative and positive spirit between our governments. And we hope to take part in a physical commission meeting next time around, and as I understand, in Kyiv. So that's very good. We're looking forward to it. I will now take you through the latest developments in trade between Norway and Ukraine, and hopefully showcase some opportunities that you will find interesting to look into. For new viewers, my name is Kjartan Svaland Tveitnes, and I'm the Managing Director of the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. I hope you see, yes. The Chamber works every day to increase the business cooperation between our two countries. A trade started by our ancient Viking forefathers over 1,000 years ago. We have refined our business model somewhat since that time, and can now boast of having a member base of more than 130 member companies from both Norway and Ukraine. And we are all united in our mission to bringing business together for a better and more sustainable future. NUCC is a non-profit, non-political membership organization existing to actively work for increased trade and business cooperation, a positive economic development in Ukraine, and enabling our members to benefit from the present bilateral business opportunities. Among services to our members, we provide concrete and practical support to our member companies with advisory on business potential in both Norway and Ukraine. And we aim to achieve our mission via putting focus on the necessity of good corporate governance and business development. And we have identified 5 business sectors where we see a particular potential for increased trade and interaction. Those are notably IT and professional services, energy and infrastructure, seafood and agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism. These are sectors where we pinpoint our efforts, and we have specific project managers to help your company navigate within these sectors and help facilitate business-to-business trade. In addition, approximately every second year, we organize larger Norwegian-Ukrainian business forums in a connection with high-level political visits. And every year, we gather 10 Ukrainian and 10 Norwegian relatively young, forward-leaning participants in our Young Entrepreneurs Program, which already has an alumni of 100 former participants. And in this program, they learn how business is done in both Ukraine and Norway, and become ambassadors for bilateral trade in their future positions. And if you have someone in mind, please inform them on the opportunity to apply. Let's see. The relations and trade between our two countries, they have long links indeed. And I'm very happy to see that we in the last few years have registered a very positive trade growth between Norway and Ukraine. If you look at the numbers, we see a very impressive growth in the last few years in trade in goods, services, and particularly in foreign direct investments in the renewable energy sphere. We register a 491% increase actually from 2015 to 2019. Norwegian energy companies have entered Ukraine with very large investments in the renewable energy sector, both in solar and wind. These Norwegian investment decisions accounted for an impressive 18% of the total foreign direct investment in Ukraine in 2019. The green tariff regime has attracted an impressive number of global players, assisting Ukraine in their efforts to secure energy diversification. These projects are very much important for the global investment attractiveness of Ukraine, and as such, their efforts and challenges in Ukraine will be followed very closely indeed. 2020 has, of course, been a very difficult year in many ways. Although, if you look at Ukrainian foreign trade in 2020, it's down 9% year over year through October, but the Norwegian-Ukrainian trade has actually overperformed so far in 2020, up 6.3%, and it has improved handsomely since 2015, and so far this year, first 3 quarters of 2020, we see a 22% growth in seafood, and this will be the best seafood trade year in history. If we look more into sort of only Norwegian exports to Ukraine, you can see that seafood has always played an essential role and still the single largest traded product between the two countries, with Ukraine becoming increasingly a more important market for Norwegian exporters. In fact, numbers so far this year indicate a new record year in trade, as I mentioned. And traditionally, Ukraine has been a market for pelagic products. However, the trend is turning towards high-end products such as salmon and trout, reflecting the increasing purchasing power of the Ukrainian consumer. Trade in fertilizers, iron and steel industry also constitutes significant volumes, in particular Norwegian ferrosilicium, which is needed to make Ukrainian stainless steel. If we look at Norwegian imports from Ukraine, I'm pleased to witness that other sectors are racing to catch up with the seafood sector, with Ukrainian opportunities within manufactured goods taking the lead. The last few years, we have seen an impressive growth in Ukrainian exports, mainly driven by clothes, electric appliances, boats, and wood products. Ukrainian production of furniture and modular houses continues to be important for the bilateral trade and experienced a 128% growth the first 7 months of 2020. And it's quite an anecdote that most of the new skis used in proud skiing nation of Norway is actually produced in the Carpathian Mountains in Ukraine, in Mukachevo. We hope to see more made in Ukraine in Norway going forward. And the newly adopted land reform bill and continued integration with the European market and EU standards bodes well for increased trade also in agricultural products. With fertile soil and abundance of land, Ukrainian agriculture could become a main producer of the many ingredients for the fish feed demanded by the expanding Norwegian aquaculture industry. This only comes as an addition to all agricultural products imported for human consumption. But as you can see, regrettably, current trade in agricultural goods is well below its potential, considering Ukraine's proximity, fertile soil, and export potential. The negligible trade driven by corn and sunflower oil is mainly explained by the unfavorable tariff conditions under the current free trade agreement on agriculture between Norway and Ukraine. This is a free trade agreement we have pushed for to be revisited for several years, and I'm glad it was brought up today during the discussions at the Trade Commission meeting. We will follow up this closely going forward. If you look at the balance in trade of services between Norway and Ukraine, Norwegian companies are particularly present in Ukraine within the IT sector, with currently approximately 2,500 Ukrainian IT specialists employed. The last years, we have witnessed an organic growth in business ties in the ICT sector, and the export of IT services account for approximately 2/3 of Norwegian service imports from Ukraine, experiencing a 12.3% growth first half of 2020, according to Ukrainian statistics, Ukrstat. However, NUCC estimate that only 1/3 of the trade in services is registered in available statistics, implying that trade in services in 2020 will amount approximately to 1.5 billion NOK and 160 million US dollars. Leading Norwegian companies within IT and professional services projects continued annual trade growth of 20 to 30% in the coming years, driven mainly by increased digitalization of society and need of IT capacity. Norwegian companies and public institutions are in increasing demand of IT competence for its continued digitalization. With your talent pool, proximity in both geography and culture, Ukraine has a lot to offer. Now, I want to show you two of my favorite graphs, showing the untapped potential in Ukraine. First, the first is a slide I borrow from our good friends and partners, Ukraine Invest. It compares and showcases the very skilled human capital that Ukraine has to offer. Here relating to a number of engineering graduates, 130,000 of them every year, and the very competitive labor costs in Ukraine. The second slide is a comparison of economic development between Ukraine and relevant countries. Ukraine, Poland, and Turkey all had about the same size and population in the 1990s. Considering the human capital and rich natural resources of Ukraine, this showcased the untapped potential in Ukraine. Since 1990, the Ukrainian economy has actually retracted, whereas Poland and Turkey has tripled their economies. With the Ukrainian people clearly in 2014 choosing the Euro-Atlantic direction, I view this as a huge opportunity in the years to come. If you have any questions to me or NUCC, please do not hesitate to contact us for a digital coffee or a meeting. I will now give the floor to my eminent colleague, Anastasia, who will moderate the panel discussion on how to unlock our bilateral trade potential. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, all right. Thank you very much for joining. We need a few minutes to settle down for this last but not least section for today's event. We are going to discuss one of my favorite topics because we are always looking into the future and try to find some opportunities. My name is Anastasia Antonik. I represent the Norwegian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. I work as a project manager responsible for manufacturing, and I'm going to lead this discussion. Together with me, I have representatives for one of the biggest sectors within the Norwegian-Ukrainian cooperation, Anne Mjøs, who represents IT, Silje Solstad, who works for the Norwegian Seafood Council, as well as Bjørget Dvorg, who represents NBT, the energy company. Welcome. For the participants who are watching us through Zoom, I would like to say that it's possible to ask your questions. You can write them to us. Also, it's possible to put your questions through B2Match in the chat box, as well as we are going to have some polling for those who are participating via Zoom, just to find out and interact a little bit more with the public through this session. All right, I think that we're settled down, and I think that we can start. I want to start with you, Anne. You represent your group CEO and founder of Itera. How are you doing? How is Itera doing today? Hasn't been any impact of Corona and COVID on the activities between Norway and Ukraine? Can you tell us a little bit about the activities of Itera nowadays?
Thank you. I guess you can see me. Is that okay? Yes, I will say that COVID-19 is actually accelerating the potential of using IT, and we also see from our perspective that we are growing this year more or less 30% in revenue compared to the same period last year. So I think also as a company we have a position to create sustainable digital business. And if you look at COVID-19 and everything about COVID-19, that has been a key topic for everyone. We need to be more digitized, everything what we're doing, but also we need to become more sustainable. So I see that I think COVID-19 is actually increasing the society towards, I would call, the fourth industrial revolution. That is some kind of future that I didn't mention that much before COVID-19, but today I really see that we are on that pace for a future where a lot more of the businesses, not only the business to consumer only, but the business to business are really accelerating the digitalization process. And also, I think if you look to Norway, we have a huge dependency on oil and gas in our society. But for the first time, I see that the minister and all the ministers are also talking more and quite often about the shift to the green economy. And that is, and some of the energy companies in Norway, like Aker, is really turning into a more green direction. With, of course, they need to, optimize and improve their existing business, but also taking the position into the new renewables. So I think that is what we see from our side, that this is not only some kind of short-term trend, it's a really big shift into more green economy. There's we are also talking about the data as the new oil. Yes, I think we are coming in that direction now because of the COVID-19 and also because of all the opportunities that the technology bring into different sectors. So from Itera perspective, we are about 600 people today. We have a delivery model where we are combining people from Kyiv and the consultants from the Nordic, especially in Norway. It's a full-fledged team where we have the business people, the customer, the UX or the user experience, the tech people, the security people, whatever. So we have a full-fledged team that managed to deliver across the border. So today we are delivering services to 20 countries around the world. And I think from a Norwegian perspective, if we're looking into the huge step we need to take into digitalization, also within the industries, there's a gap of resources. We need to have much more resources or capacity into Norway. And that is a great opportunity from UK or Ukraine, that we really need to have these resources, this capacity to really transform the economy in Norway into more sustainable green economy, I will say. So I think that's a big opportunity. And we have people today sitting in Kyiv that are really at the cutting edge of this kind of digitalization. So the people, our people in Kyiv, really have this kind of knowledge already in place. But I also think there is export possibility for the Norwegian company that has built this kind of technology that could be also very important for the transition and the speed of the society in Ukraine. We are talking again about what we can digitize for all the consumer, but also there's a lot of heavy asset industries in Ukraine. I really believe that in the Nordic region, we have technology that is ahead of the competition. We are really at the forefront of the transition into this kind of industrial revolution. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that we can also look at, where we are bringing technology into heavy asset industry to make the businesses more sustainable. More or less the same what we are seeing in Norway, because there's a lot of push on making every kind of business need to be sustainable. And the investors are also very keen on being a part of this kind of transition. So I think we can also look at opportunity where we bring this technology back to Ukraine and in different sector, in the energy sector, or in the manufacturing sector, whatever, because you have the skills in your people. We know that these are very bright people that we have in Kyiv or in Ukraine. So I think this could also be very important for the transition of the economy and the society in Ukraine. And when I turn my focus into domestic activities, because today we are only exporting services, then I come back to everything we talk about. That might be a big obstacle. That is, of course, the corruption. You know all about that. So it's very important that you continue with the fight against corruption, because these investors are very afraid of this one. But I see there is a quite good improvements each year. It takes a lot of time. It should be in before, but I'm quite optimistic that by doing more business or trade cross-border, I think we are in better position to really increase the level of, I will say, matureness of the country also in Ukraine.
From my side, I wanted to add that from all the previous panel discussions and presentations where Arne participated, and I've seen, I would nominate Arne for the ambassador of the Ukrainian IT sector in the world, because you always talk so nicely and positively about the Ukrainian capacity, and you always mention that it can help Norway, which is lacking the IT capacity. So it's very nice to hear that you're still staying positive and that you are still open and giving tips for how to develop. Is there anything else that is missing on the Ukrainian side or the Norwegian side that could help out to develop the IT business relationship between the two countries?
I think there's two perspectives which is very important from my point of view. I think it's very important that Ukraine continue to invest in the education system, that you are really at the cutting edge, because you have a strong position today and you need to develop, continue to be at the cutting edge. A lot of discussion about data scientists. You have all the, the position in terms of physics and mathematical skills is very important to combine into IT. So you have a strong position there. Continue to build that one. And from the Norwegian side, I will say also for the minister, I think we are, if I look at some of the businesses and also the public sector, at least, they do not accept more distributed deliverables. It's always driven by, you need to have the people on site. But what is very clear after COVID-19, every businesses and public units has seen that it's possible to really work distributed because of the COVID-19. So that is no excuse any longer. So I think also for Norway that we need to be more open. We need to work more international and include more multi-international skills into our project. Not only talking about we need to be Norwegian, we need to have the culture by the Norwegian, whatever. For me, that belongs to the past. So if I'm looking at other people in Ukraine, they are really agile in the way of working. And the skills is actually above the skill set in general I see in Norway. So working more like be more open and look at different kind of working methods or whatever across the border is more obvious now, because of everyone has been working distributed from home office, whatever. So I think I hope that we can push more on this kind of sourcing model across the border than we have seen in the past, especially the public sector. I'm very disappointed that they only talk about the Norwegian. That is not good, I think. So we need to improve that, and we know that it's really possible to do it also within the public sector in Norway.
Thank you very much, Arne. There has been a question from the public to the previous session, if we could distribute the presentation. Yes, we can do that. We'll send out the presentation for your information. So if you missed it out, you can also look through later, as well as this session is recorded. It will be posted on YouTube. All right, before we go to the next question, I would like to ask our public the first poll about obstacle. So those who are watching us through Zoom can see the question now on the screen. Here. So the question is, what are the main obstacles to increase cooperation between Ukraine and Norway? Please choose maximum 2 answers. And the answers or the variants are lack of knowledge among Norwegian companies about Ukrainian market, unstable political situation in Ukraine, unclear or different legislation in Ukraine, lack of financial instruments to run business in Ukraine, lack of well-functioning judicial system, or other. You can write your comments in the chat box so we can read later. While the polling is still on, so you'll have 1 minute. And while the polling is still on, I'll go to our next speaker, Bjørge. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. You work as SVP Project Development at NBT. And NBT is a company that develops, operates, and owns large-scale wind farms in emerging economies. Thank you very much for joining us today. NBT has been present in Ukraine for some time now. So what is your experience on establishing and running business in Ukraine? Do you have any thoughts around that? As a foreign company in Ukraine, what is your experience?
Yeah, thank you very much for having us here. It's a pleasure to be able to share our experiences, and we'll try and be as balanced as we can be in this. Before we go into further details, the overall picture is we're positive. We do believe in the long-term projections and the long-term picture for Ukraine. All our actions, not words, but all our actions prove this. And I will come back to that a little bit later. You asking, how is it doing business? What is our experience? And I think that is actually reflected in facts. What happened in 2013, we visited Ukraine the first time. I was not employed then with MBT, but the MBT was over there and felt that the judicial system the framework conditions for the country didn't support an investment in the country. There was too much instability. That changed, came back in 2017, and we saw significant positive changes in the legislation, in the framework, in the conditions. And with this in place and having that kind of vision for Ukraine as a land of opportunity, which it truly is, both human capital and nature resources. We took our first kind of bite of the Ukrainian wind power market by buying the Syvash wind farm project in the southern part of Ukraine next to Crimea. It's a 400 million euro investment, which now actually we bought that in 2018, and now at Christmas this year, or to Christmas this year, it's built. And it will be fully operational end of Q1 next year. So that's a proof of what we think about Ukraine. For the last 1.5 years, we've also developed another investment in wind farms in Ukraine. It's a 1.2 billion euro investment, which is at its final stage of development. And we expect to start construction first quarter next year. That will be Europe's largest wind farm onshore. So what is our view on Ukraine? Obviously, we believe in this. I mean, we are putting our money where our mouth is. That's the proof. Having said that, to go to Ukraine and do business requires higher returns than a typical Scandinavian country. For many reasons. And we touched on that in both these sections today or this afternoon. I would like to mention in particular the bureaucracy of doing business in Ukraine. We will come in, touch on challenges at a later stage in this discussion, but the bureaucracy in itself, what we call red tape. There's too much red tape, and obviously the politicians running the country are aware of this, and there's put in place many reforms over the last years we've been in Ukraine to cut red tape. And red tape is a cause to corruption. So this is something everyone in Ukraine, decision makers, are aware of and are working to reduce. Can you navigate in this environment? Yes, you just need more return, basically. And why do I say we need more return? Because banks are asking for higher interest rates, and our financial backers are asking for a higher return because the risk is higher. So that's the balance in this. But it's fully possible to do good business in Ukraine, and we truly believe it will be better. It will be better. There are many reforms happening and taking place, which will further improve the business climate in Ukraine.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was a positive prognosis. Let's look at the results from the first polling. And lack of knowledge among Norwegian companies about Ukrainian market is the first one. And I think that's very true. This is what our Chamber of Commerce is working with. We're trying to increase the interest and knowledge general among the Norwegian companies about opportunities on the Ukrainian market. The second place is lack of well-functioning judicial system. This is something that the government is working on, and also Ukrainian people are pushing, so the answers reflect what we are working for and what we are trying to change. There was also a question if the business meetings will be held till the end of the next week. Yes, we prolonged those who registered through B2Match. We have prolonged now the possibilities for B2B, for direct meetings with other participants who registered for this event. So please log in, check out if there are anyone interesting for your potential cooperation, and book a meeting. We think that in this time, when everything is digital, the interaction is still important and vital for businesses. Therefore, we are here to create the platform to connect people directly. So make sure you check out. I'm going to send out more instructions and informations about that. You can also take contact with us if you would like to be put with someone in contact directly, or if you have any request, and we can help you with. All right, and the next participant, Celia. Welcome to us. We talked about IT, we talked about energy, but as we saw on the previous presentation, seafood is actually one of the largest components between the trade of goods between Norway and Ukraine. Why is it like that? Why the trend changed? This year is promising to be one of the best when it comes to the Norwegian seafood in Ukraine, on Ukrainian market. Can you give your thoughts on that?
I'll try my very best. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, for Norwegian seafood, the Ukrainian market has been increasingly important since the mid-1990s, so we're not super surprised that it is continuing to be so. And as Kjartan mentioned, the market has developed from a so-called pelagic market to a more modern or mature market, if you will, in which Ukrainian companies import the whole range of species from Norway, but also from many other countries. So we do have competitors in Ukraine. And even if the trends are in large shifting, the trade between Norway and Ukraine to a large extent stays the same in terms of seafood, meaning Norwegian companies export raw materials and the Ukrainian companies either process this or they distribute it domestically. And an important asset, I guess, in this respect is the development of modern retail in Ukraine. Because without this, we wouldn't have seen the same shift to a more modern market. We also see that Ukrainian consumers are getting far more demanding on quality. Modern consumption patterns show also in Ukraine. And last but not least, environmental issues and food safety are of increasing importance to Ukrainian consumers. So if you look at the numbers from Norway to Ukraine from 2014 till today, you see that first there was a small decrease following the revolution, but then a steady increase as of 2017. For salmon, you've seen a shift from frozen to fresh, consistent with the whole Ukraine becoming a more modern market that can consume more fresh. Also a market that pays a wee bit more than used to be the tradition. For trout, for 2 years following the closing of the Russian market, we saw a sharp increase to Ukraine. And I think Norwegian producers are extremely grateful for the Ukrainian market absorbing the trout, because as well, for salmon, we have an awful lot of markets globally. We can export to most anywhere. Trout is not the same. There's only a select few markets that absorb trout, Ukraine being one of them. If we turn to the two other species that we export most of to Ukraine, for mackerel, the numbers have been relatively stable, but with, for some reason, a stable increase in value this year. And finally, herring, the export of whole frozen has been steadily decreasing both in value and weight. But on the other hand, there's an increase over the last 2 years in other herring products, meaning more processed products, which is a good thing for the Ukrainian processing industry. So I think if we look ahead a bit, we believe that Ukraine will continue its positive development. But as the others have been dipping into a little bit, there are uncertainties such as the economic development, the possibility for financial setbacks. And I think this influences the Norwegian seafood exporters' willingness to go all in, if you will. So there are issues to be solved. We need a bit more certainty in the market, but there's also, without doubt, great possibilities.
Thank you very much. As being a Ukrainian living in Norway, I still think that the best herring I tried was in Ukraine, and it was from Norway. So and I think that I have a lot of friends who are always looking for the Norwegian herring on the shelves in the supermarket. So there is a trend, but there is also more maybe opportunities besides the increased export to the Ukrainian dinner market. Besides bringing the product, let's talk a little bit about the reprocessing possibilities. PAM Convention. Why is Ukraine in the unique position for Norwegian seafood exporter? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I certainly will. Now, talking about the PAM Convention, it is in essence getting into the nitty-gritty. The PAM Convention has a possibility to accumulate origin, if you will. That's what they call it. And it is not brand new, but it is under-communicated for Norwegian exporters and possibly also for Ukrainian producers. So this is a share bonus, basically. We're just tapping into something that's already there. Well, if we turn to how it's done, in a normal free trade agreement, you have 3 conditions. You have a product is wholly obtained, meaning it comes from where it comes from. Norwegian salmon comes from Norway. It's born and bred there. Then you have something called sufficiently worked or processed, which is the amount of processing a product needs to go through to shift its origin. So you shift the origin from Norwegian to Ukrainian, for instance. And then you have something called minimal operations or insufficient working or processing. Now, insufficient working or processing, obviously in the name means nothing's going to happen. But with the PAM Convention, which comprises the EU, the EFTA states, and then the Eastern European states and the states on the southern bank of the Mediterranean, 51 in total, I believe, you can get away with only the minimal operation, which means that for Norway, we don't have excellent market access to the EU for seafood. It is quite frankly unmodern, and we've seen other countries surpass us for many, many years. This is because we negotiated our market access in the 1970s, and EU is not known to be particularly modern in this matter because they protect their own processing industry. Now, Ukraine, having negotiated with the EU far later, have gotten excellent market access to the EU, but we can use it, meaning we will export raw material to Ukraine where we can process it. And while processing it, we obtain Ukrainian origin for Norwegian seafood, meaning Norwegian producers together with the Ukrainian ones can use the Ukrainian preferences, the zero duty, to export further on to the EU. So in that way, we can support Ukrainian processing industry, and we can circumvent the fact that we don't have excellent market access to the EU. So I think that's pretty good.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, do you have any thoughts what species or what products could be the most potential? Like, I don't think that it's possible for all seafood. Are there any specific products that could be reprocessed in Ukraine?
Well, in theory, it's possible for all products. So what you have to look on is basically how is our access to the EU, how is our access to the Ukraine, and how is the Ukrainian access to the EU? So it's a triangle. And when I looked at that and then at the species that are already exported, so you'd assume a certain knowledge in the Ukrainian processing industry, salmon singles out. Because for salmon, the MFN duty, the duty rate, what you pay to customs, is 2% for fresh. And it's 13% for smoked, and we know that the EU market consumes a lot of smoked salmon. Now, we have a quota of duty-free from Norway. It's only 6,000 tons, which is minuscule compared to what we actually export. We exhaust this quota between the 5th and the 7th of January every year. It's renewed on the 1st of January. So basically 51 weeks of the year, we don't have any tariff-free quota. Now the Ukraine has zero duty to the EU. So if we export there, we circumvent the 13% of duty for smoked salmon. And even just for fillets, if we export fresh whole or frozen whole even, which is not that common, but still, filleting in the Ukraine will give us major advantage. We'll circumvent only the 2%, but still with the cost of processing in Ukraine being so much lower than in Norway, it is a lot to save. When you look at the other ones, for trout, you have a certain possibility. You actually have 1% less than in Norway. So you pay 7% duty, we pay 8%. But also with the processing costs, that would be fairly lucrative. But then for mackerel and herring, you'd have to process it even further. You'd have to go beyond the normal up to smoking. You'd have to go to vinegar or canning to make it worth your while. But still, I mean, that is also products that are traditionally consumed in the EU. So it would be a certain interest for it, but the stretch is somewhat farther. And our quotas are also bigger, meaning we can export for a good long while ourselves, and then we need some help from the Ukrainians.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we need to wrap up. Everyone is getting hungry after our talk about seafood. But a very short question. I have two questions, actually, both from the public. First one is to you, Anna, and it's also very relevant to what we do. So we have some small companies, small IT companies from Ukraine that are joining our Chamber of Commerce, and they are hoping and looking for partners on the Norwegian market. Any tips you can give to them? What I noted that you were talking about being more sustainable from before. Any other tips that you would give them for those who want to enter the Norwegian market, find some Norwegian customers?
The easiest answer is actually to work with the Chamber of Commerce. I think you bring them, you connect them, and I think that's the best because then you also have the proof that these people from Ukraine and the companies are really good. So I think continue working through the Chamber of Commerce and try to connect them in the best way.
Thank you very much. We didn't ask you to answer like that. That was your answer, just to be clear on that. But thank you very much. We are planning a lot of activities for the next year, and we're going to update our calendar very soon. Besides that, we're going to diversify the sectors we're working with. And of course, the first probably half of the year is going to be digital in this format, but we're planning a lot of delegation trips to Ukraine. So the new schedule will be available on our website very soon. Stay tuned and check it out. Maybe there is something that is relevant to your business or your company, and just drop us an email if you have any questions or there is anything we can do for you to help. And the last question, if there are no questions from the viewers, does Scandinavian countries prefer to collaborate with Ukraine on a governmental basis or on a private one? Of course, it depends on the field of interest, but I like to hear some relevant comments. And I think of course, everyone can, if you have your thoughts, you can share, but I think maybe Björge, because your company probably has to collaborate both on the private level and with the government. Do you have any strategy? Is there anything you stick to when you come to the new market? You're building relations with the government and the private companies. Any thoughts around that?
Well, there's been a challenging year. Let's be in the real. With the new president, it was introduced a new framework agreement with renewable energy companies like ours, wind, solar, biomass, etc. As we know, MBT and Scatec is providing a lot of foreign direct investment into Ukraine. As soon as someone pops that or it goes public, it creates uncertainty. Leave emotions aside, we're down to uncertainty, and uncertainty brings the price of money increase. It's much more difficult to realize projects in that environment. What was good is that we knew all the way through that it was a goal for the management of Ukraine to come to a solution, which they did last summer. We can live with that solution, and the proof of that is that we're actually working further on investing in the Sofia project. Having said that, the law which is implemented and is set to be the framework, the future framework of the country for renewable energy, is not fully executed or completed, because the guaranteed buyer, which is making the payments for these tariffs we're talking about, is not cleaned up yet. It's not fully financed. We know there is a lot of effort going in to sort out the financing of this going forward. We put our trust by coming to Ukraine, but we need to see further that kind of active actions going forward to stabilize the framework situation for our industry and for all industries. I mean, this is not energy related or infrastructure related. This goes for everyone who wants to do business in Ukraine, whether they are Ukrainians or foreigners. Stable conditions, stable framework is key for unlocking big investments, and that will come if you're able now to deliver on what you promised.
Thank you very much. I agree with every word you just said, and we'll push from our side and do whatever we can do. And I think that a lot of actors are working on this case already, so I hope that we'll see the result very soon. Thank you very much, participants and panelists, for being with us. We're going to wrap up. I just want to say thank you for your ideas. We're going to take them with us to the next year when we're planning 2021. It's probably needless to say that 2020 has been challenging for businesses, and I think we should have more events like this where we can inspire and create a platform for interaction and cooperation between businesses across the boards. As I mentioned before, we created our event on B2Match platform that we're using for interaction. So it's possible to schedule meetings with other registered participants, those who are open for network. Also, it's possible to register for new meetings, so to become a new registered participant. And this is a possibility that you can use until the end of November. I have personally already scheduled around 6 meetings, and I saw there were around 70 scheduled. So please go and share. It's on our website, and I'm going to send you also email with the instructions. We are updating our calendar, which will be available on our website, nucc.no. Please also check out if there is any relevant project that we have for you. And the last one that I want to mention, that our business matchmaking portal is still online and running. Please check it out. Maybe you're looking for something that is already published there. If there is nothing published that is relevant to your project, make a proposal yourself. Next year, and if of course the pandemic allows, we are planning a bigger maritime forum in both Odessa and Bergen in Norway, and that's going to happen next fall, if of course it's going to be possible to travel and if the quarantine restrictions will be lifted. I would like to thank you, all our partners, panelists, and audience for being with us today. I would like to thank you both, the Norwegian Embassy in Ukraine, for creating such a great panel. We wish we could make this live stage in Norway, but unfortunately we couldn't do it this year. But I'm still happy that we could connect online and discuss important issues. I would like to thank you, the Ukrainian Embassy in Norway, for being a partner, as well as the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the support, and also the Norwegian Ministry of Industry, of Trade, Industry and Fisheries for your cooperation. Thank you very much. Let's stay in touch, stay healthy, wear masks, and hope to see you at the offline event next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.